Hi everybody, welcome to our Facebook Live for today, World Giraffe Day. It is June 21st, and that's the longest day of the year, so we picked today to celebrate the tallest animals in the world. So we're here with our giraffes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the giraffes we have here, the giraffes that are out in the wild, and World Giraffe Day in general. So World Giraffe Day was started by the Giraffe Conservation Foundation several years ago to try to draw attention to the fact that giraffes were going extinct silently in the wild. They call it a silent extinction. Their population was declining very rapidly throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, but there wasn't a lot of research being done on these guys. And so World Giraffe Day was started as a way to bring awareness to the plights that they were facing in the wild. Here at the Houston Zoo, we have Maasai giraffe. There are a good number of Maasai giraffe out in the wild. They live largely in Kenya and Tanzania in Africa, and they're one of 4 different giraffe species in the world at the moment. These guys live in a part of Africa where their habitat's well protected, so their population is not declining as rapidly as the others, which is great. But we have a lot of conservation organizations out there working on protecting giraffe in the wild. One that we partner with is actually called the Somali Giraffe Project, and they're doing a really awesome job relocating giraffe into parts of their native habitat. So there are places in Kenya, Somalia, areas like that, that giraffe have gone extinct locally. It's places where they used to live in the wild, and then just now, for one reason or another, they're not found in that part of their habitat anymore. And so the Somali Giraffe Project is working on bringing giraffe back to those areas and supporting them in times of drought. Droughts can cause a lot of problems for giraffe in the wild because giraffes are browsers. They eat the leaves out of the trees. But during droughts, their food becomes scarce. Not only water, but also the leaves from the trees become less nutritious. There are less trees, some trees die. So the best thing that they can be doing for giraffe during drought areas is making sure that they have plenty of food. And so they're doing that to help boost wild giraffe populations. So for this World Giraffe Day, if you want to support giraffes on this day that we use to celebrate them, you can definitely help us support the Somali Wild Giraffe Project and help protect them in the wild. Now this big guy that you're looking at right now, this is Zawadi. He is our 5-year-old male giraffe here at the Houston Zoo. He came to us last year, and he's been fully introduced to our whole herd at this point, and he is our big boy right now. He's the only boy we have here, so he is probably going to be the tallest and the heaviest soon. Right now, though, we've got one giraffe that's still about the same size as him, and that is a Sally, one of our other female giraffes. She is about as tall as him and can go toe-to-toe with him in the sparring matches that they have. So in giraffe spar, it's a behavior called necking, where they'll kind of line up parallel to each other and they'll swing their heads around to knock into each other. That's how they fight in the wild. Here in zoos, we can see kind of a light version of that. I joke that it's like when people, siblings are wrestling just for fun. They're not actually trying to hurt each other. Well, Zawadi likes to spar, but Asali is big enough that she can hold her own against him, so he does not always win these sparring bouts, which is nice. It's kind of nice to have somebody around that can make sure his ego doesn't get too big, being the only big boy around. He's got a big old long tongue that you guys are seeing on display, and he's getting some romaine lettuce right now. That is his absolute favorite treat. Our giraffes get a pretty wide variety of treats throughout the day. Romaine is his favorite. They can also get kale. They can get apples and carrots and sweet potatoes, and then every day they get a lot of alfalfa hay. Alfalfa hay is a really green leafy hay, and it provides the roughage that they need in order to have a healthy digestive system. But they always get lettuce, at least 20 heads a day between all 4 of them, and they will eat as much of that as they possibly can. Zawadi never gets tired of lettuce. It's his favorite treat in the whole wide world. Today, because it is World Giraffe Day, we gave them a couple of extra special treats. They got a whole lot of browse today, which is when we were able to give them branches with leaves still on them. So we've been able, that way they can eat the branches and the leaves right off the branch, right off the tree, the way that they would be eating in the wild. So we've gotten an extra browse delivery today from our wonderful horticulture team here at the Houston Zoo. So for World Giraffe Day, we've gotten a lot of extra browse for them. So if you are able to watch this live or even look at the webcams, you'll probably see our giraffe munching on browse throughout the day. They'll eat all the leaves, and then when all the leaves are gone, then they'll start to eat the bark, and then when all the leaves are gone, when all the bark is gone, they'll start to eat the actual branches, and they will just keep on going, and they will eat and eat and eat. They love the browse. We grow actually 20-ish different species of trees and bushes on grounds that our giraffe can eat, and we can feed to them every day. So they get a wide variety of plants in their diet. So something you might be noticing just from the particular, shot angle that you're getting is giraffes don't really have any teeth on their upper lips. When he picks up his lip to take in lettuce, you might see that there's just not really a whole lot of teeth up there on the top edge. So they actually have bottom teeth in the front, and then they have a hard palate up top. But it means that giraffe can't really chomp into something the way that we do. If you think about the way that we bite into a hamburger, giraffe don't have any top teeth there. They can't do that. So instead they use those big long tongues that he's got on full display right now. They use those big long tongues to pull food all the way to the back of their mouth. And in the back of their mouth, they do have molars on the top and bottom jaw, and they can use it to grind up the plant material that they bring in. Giraffe are also a ruminant species, so it means that they have a multi-chambered stomach, very similar to a cow. Actually, just like a cow, they will digest their food multiple times. So they're going to kind of take in new food, they'll chew and swallow it. After a while, they're going to stop taking in new food, they're going to pull up their cud, which is sort of the food that's already been digested a little bit, and then they're going to chew and swallow that again, and then they'll just continue to do that again and again. And each time they do it, the food that they've eaten gets broken down a little bit more, gets just a little bit more digested, a little bit more mineral nutrients and stuff being pulled out of it, until by the time they're done digesting it and finally passes out of their stomach and into the rest of their digestive system, they have wrung every last bit of nutritional value they possibly can out of their food, which is great. They've got one of the most efficient digestive systems of all mammals. We've got Gigi over here as well coming up to say hi. Gigi is about 8 years old. She's turning 8 this year. She's our youngest giraffe female. And she also enjoys some lettuce, but she's a little bit shorter than Zawadi, so sometimes she has to reach for it. She's also just rubbing her neck on the bar right now. Gigi was actually born here. Her mother is a Sali, so we've got a multi-generational herd here at the Houston Zoo. Gigi is very spooky for a giraffe, I like to say. I hesitate to use the word diva just yet, but she's fully on the way to being there. She likes things her way, and she doesn't like them to be any other way. And she likes to put in minimal effort to get things her way. But we're happy to comply. She can be spotted, and you can tell her apart from some other giraffe that we have by how dark her face is. She's not our tallest giraffe, she's not our shortest giraffe, she's just solidly in the middle. Giraffes' spot patterns are unique to them. Each giraffe has a spot pattern that is as unique to them as our fingerprints are to us. So no two giraffes in the world have the exact same spot pattern, and their spots never change throughout their life. The spot patterns and the shapes of their spots, the ones when they're born, are the same as when they die. There's no change. They just get a little bit bigger as the giraffe gets bigger. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments. If not, I will continue to ramble about giraffes for as long as we need to, because I love talking about these guys. These are some of my favorite animals, and I'm happy to be talking about them on World Giraffe Day, where we get to celebrate them, especially them on this day. But yeah, so giraffe spot patterns are unique to every giraffe, and that's actually how researchers that are studying giraffe in the wild can tell them apart. There haven't been a whole lot of long-term studies done on giraffes. The ones that exist now were started only about 15 to 20 years ago. So we're starting to really work on long-term studies of how giraffes live, how they interact with their environment, how long do they live in the wild. And the way that researchers can tell them apart as individuals is by looking at their spot patterns. So they will get pictures of all the known giraffe in an area, the left side and the right side, and they'll catalog them until they know all of the giraffe in the area, and then they'll be able to use camera trap photos that just take pictures like motion sensor cameras. They'll just take pictures whenever they sense motion, and then they can look at what giraffe is in that picture, and they know exactly where each giraffe was what time of day. And so they're using that to map out giraffe movement patterns. We want to know how they're using the habitat available to them every single day. Most of their habitat use is revolved around food and them trying to get food. They like to forage about 80% of the time. So here at the zoo, we like to mimic that. These guys always have food available. And you guys actually have the opportunity to feed our giraffe, just like we're doing right here, every single day at the zoo at 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock. We have a giraffe feeding opportunity where you get to come up and you get to get close up and personal with our giraffe, just like this, and you get to feed them lettuce at our feeding platform. So if you guys are giraffe lovers like I am, this is a great opportunity to get some FaceTime with a giraffe. That big long tongue that she's using right now, again, it helps them kind of position food in their mouth. Even if something's not perfectly shaped for them to pull into their mouth, they can use that tongue to help rearrange it. Giraffes can lick basically every part of their body. So Adeline wants to know, how many spots do they have? You know, that's a great question. I genuinely do not know, but they probably have several hundred. So I'm going to guess somewhere between 200 and 1,000, but each giraffe is going to be a little bit different. They have different spot patterns, so some are going to have more and some are going to have less. And it's just kind of genetics that determines what their spot pattern is going to look like. It's a good question. I like to point out a couple of cool adaptations that giraffe have on their face. Zawadi is a really good example of both of them. So you can see that big bump in the center of his forehead. So that is a calcium deposit, and that calcium deposit is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as he gets older. And it makes male giraffes' heads very heavy, and it helps them win fighting matches in the wild. So having a heavy head really helps them have a little bit more oomph when they're fighting. And so the bigger, older males have the bigger, heavier heads, and it gives them an advantage when they fight over territory and over females in the wild. They've also, all of our giraffe have 2 ossicones on the back of their head. Ossicones is a fun word. So ossicones are something that only giraffe and their relatives, the okapi, have. Ossicones look a little bit like people think that they're horns, but they're a little different than horns. They're covered in fur, as you guys can see now. They've got fur all up and down them. But giraffe are born with them, so horns aren't covered in fur. Most animals aren't born with horns, but giraffe are. So when giraffe are born, they have ossicones. They lay flat against the calf's head, and they are very flimsy. They're flexible. They're very much like the cartilage in our ears. And so as the giraffe grows, those ossicones start to perk up, and they actually ossify, which is a process where they turn to bone. And so they're called ossicones because they ossify. Over time, calcium gets deposited in those ossicones as well, and they harden up, and they actually fuse to the giraffe's skeletal structure, and they become a part of their skull, basically, and they just become these very big calcium deposits that they use when they're sparring with each other, again, as kind of a point of impact. Both males and female giraffe have them, and they're actually born with them, which is really unique. Denise asks, did Bobby leave, and who was his mom? So yes, Bobby was a giraffe that was born here in, I think, 2019, and he has left. He now lives at the Columbus Zoo, and he went there as a breeding recommendation for their girls, which is great. They have a big herd of giraffe over there, and he's going to be the breeding bull at the Columbus Zoo, which is really awesome. His mom was Camille, who's actually, we're about to show her on camera. That's Camille. Camille is actually our shortest giraffe, and she's standing a little bit further back than the other giraffes, so she probably looks real short. In person, she's about 14 feet tall, but that was Bobby's mom. That's Camille. Camille was also born here. She is about 9 years old, so I think she was born in 2014. So yes, we only have 4 giraffe here at the moment, but we love them. They're all great. What do you love most about working with giraffes? Oh, that could fill up an hour if I really got going with it. I love giraffes, I think, because they are kind of all things. When you ask somebody, oh, describe a giraffe for me, what do you think they're like? People always say things like, wow, they're so magnificent, they're so graceful. And they are. They're also really silly, and I love that about them. They like to use branches that fall on the ground to scratch their bellies, and they lick their own eyeballs and use their tongue to pick their nose sometimes. They can be silly and majestic kind of at the same time, and I really do love that about them. They're very patient, but they're also very reactive. New things they're usually going to stay far, far away from, but be curious and want to go look at them and want to investigate, but then run away if it moves. They're like I said, they're just kind of a whole barrel of contradictions, and I really love that about them. They are not the smartest animals in the world, but they can learn, and you can watch them figure things out in real time. They're fascinating, magnificent animals, and they're a real joy to work with for me. They're my favorite species of everything that I have the privilege of working with here. How can you tell R4 Giraffe apart? it's a little bit different for each giraffe. Sometimes it's the shape of their face, sometimes it's the shape of their ossicones, sometimes it's the spot patterns on their face, and sometimes it's their height. Camille, who was the shorter one that I was talking about before, she's the lightest in color. So we joke that she's the blondest giraffe, so she's the blonde out of the group. Zawadi's our only boy, and he's significantly bigger than the rest of the girls, just in like, I don't know, like his head is bigger, his chest is deeper, so he just looks like a boy. I don't know how to describe it. So you can tell him apart. And then Asali and Gigi are our other two. Asali's a little bit taller and has and a little bit darker, and Gigi has a darker face but lighter spots. So there's no one good way you're going to be able to tell all of our giraffe apart, but it's a combination of things. Just kind of looking at the shape of their face, looking at their spot patterns, and looking at their coloration. Well, thanks for all the good questions, and thank you for tuning in to our Facebook Live today on World Giraffe Day. Please join us next week for our next Facebook Live.